newspaper. And when I was a community newspaper reporter and editor, I loved it. I was telling the story of a community. And then I met Peter and Paul Reynolds, which we're going to talk a little bit about the magic of the Reynolds. But I met them, and after fighting for 4 years of saying, no, I have my degree in journalism, I cannot go and work for a media company, I have no idea what you're talking about, I finally took the leap. And I now have the absolute pleasure of working with schools and organizations to design programs that foster that love of story and the courage to create bravely. In everything we do, and even on the screen behind me, we have this mantra of creating bravely. And so today, as we're looking at SEL and picture books, I want you to think about what a young Peter Reynolds might have been when he was in 7th grade, and why create bravely is so important to him now. So we're going to do a little history. I told you my story, so we're going to do a little history of FableVision learning. So how many people know who Peter Reynolds is? And I cannot see chats, so I'm just going to do hand things. So Peter and Paul, awesome. Peter and Paul Reynolds, about 25 years ago. Paul is Peter's twin brother. The way to tell them apart, Peter's hair usually flops down and he has a beard. Paul's hair pushes back, does a swoop here, and there's no beard. That is the way to tell them apart. But they will pretend to be each other. They will say they don't, but they have pretended to be each other. So 25 years ago, they started a media company called FableVision. And out of that came FableVision Learning, where we create digital storytelling tools, STEM tools, custom programs, as you heard, with a goal of bringing creativity and compassion to teachers and classrooms and students and informal learning spaces around the world. Our focus at FableVision Learning has always been the heart of the individual. I look at it as a head-heart connection. So what gives that individual meaning and joy? When I started, I was sharing this with Patty earlier, when I started at FableVision, my first week, I said, okay, where is your handbook? And I'm like, how, dress code, all this stuff. And Adam Landry, who's the vice president of FableVision Studios, handed me a copy of the first edition of the North Star, which was a book that Peter published, self-published. And he said, this is our handbook. And for a company to say our handbook is a picture book that we're going to go into it, so I'm not going to spoil it, but a picture book that helps you find your direction and purpose was a game changer for me. Because as I mentioned before, I came from the newspaper world. And here I was at a company where the mission of them and the mission of FableVision is to give the individual meaning and joy. So nowadays, when we talk about this purpose, it's SEL, or social emotional learning. It's fundamental to what we do at FableVision, and it's the core of a lot of Peter's books. So just like how I shared a little bit about my story, I'm going to share a tiny bit about Peter. So Peter will often talk about when he was a kid. He was the one daydreaming, and he doodled in class. He got in trouble. There's some story about a hot dog that I really have never really figured out, but Paul ended up taking the blame for it. So he would get in trouble. He would doodle. He would daydream. And there were certain teachers along his path that recognized that value of Peter, of what was in his heart and his imagination. One such teacher is credited in the book, The Dot. Mr. Matson was Peter's 7th grade math teacher. And if you've never read the book, The Dot, we're not going to read it tonight, but I highly recommend picking it up. It is about a little girl who says she can't create, and the teacher that encourages her to make her mark. And that's what Mr. Matson did for Peter. He listened, he saw Peter doodling in class, in his math class. And Mr. Matson goes, hey, Pete, can you come see me after class? And Peter's like, okay, I'm in trouble. And Mr. Matson goes, look, I saw you were you're doodling in class. And I want you, I know you love to draw, and I want you to understand why I love math. Can you take this textbook home and make a story for me out of one of these concepts? And so he took the math textbook home and he doodled and doodled and doodled and came back with a comic book about math. And Mr. Matheson goes, "Oh my goodness, Peter, do you know what you did?" And he's like, "I did what you told me to do." And he's like, "No, no, no. You've created a storyboard, and storyboards are what you make animations out of." And Peter's like, "Oh, that's cool." And he's like, "Do you want to make an animation?" And Peter's like, "Yes, Mr. Matheson, I want to make an animation." And Mr. Matheson goes, "I have no idea how to do that." And they together went to the high school. They found the media teacher there and then pulled in Paul Reynolds, and he created his first animation to teach math. And that changed his life. That moment set Peter on this path where 20 years later, 25 years later, he would start a media company to teach people how to teach people differently, to tell stories that matter and stories that move. And it also supported all of his books. He is a New York Times bestselling author, and he has written and illustrated so many amazing picture books and launched FableVision and owns his own bookstore in Dedham Square. And he's a huge community activist for his town. Some things that I like to share about Peter is he credits all his success to the support of people along the way. And the unique thing about Peter, and I'm not just saying this because I work for him, is when you open his books, you see his heart on every page. And there's this one book, when I was preparing for this last night, my favorite book that Peter wrote is called Playing from the Heart. And it is a book that nobody really picks up. It's one of those like sits on a shelf, no one really reads it. I love this book. It is about a little boy who plays a piano, and he learns how to play it. He learns how to play it, and then he puts it down. And it deals with family relationships and death. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. But there's one part of this book, and Peter's never answered me on this. There's a page in it. So this is what I mean. When you open Peter's books, you see him. There's a line that says, "As he got older, his legs could reach the sustain pedal and the notes flowed. Raj noticed that he could mix the dots the way he mixed his watercolors." And you're seeing this little boy playing the piano turn into an artist. Now, I read this book before realizing that Peter plays the piano. Not well, but he plays. So there's a uniqueness in Peter's books and why I'm going to be talking today about how we tie them to SEL. But Peter shares his heart. So let's see, my brain gets a little wonky. Okay, so these books have been serving to support teachers and parents who want to encourage their kids, nurture their kids' social and emotional well-being. Because education is more than the 3 R's. It's about being there for the whole kid and helping them find their way in life. We have learned at FableVision, I have learned in my life that books are those inroads for talking about any subject, sometimes very deeply personal ones, because it engages our empathy and helps us think about our emotions and tough situations in a way that feels safe. This is called Andrea Overshare time. I was thinking about this also yesterday, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm one of these people. I love picture books. I blame my mother for this. My mom was an educator. She is a nanny now, and I have an extremely large picture book collection because of her. And when I was thinking about how books help handle with emotions, I was a junior in college, and I went on a trip to Australia. And when I was there, I found this book called The Red Tree. And it won for that year, won the Children's Book Council of Australia. My big thing is I try to pick up books, whatever country I travel to, whatever state I travel to. And I picked up this book and I cried in the middle of Sydney because this book was how I felt as a college student. It starts with this little girl who's like, you know, she wakes up and she's like, sometimes the day begins when there's nothing to look forward to. But you know what? Sometimes it's scary when you're a junior in college and you don't know what you're doing. And so every page of this book just continued to go into like all these troubles might come at once. All of this stuff might happen. And the books and the layout and the pictures just spoke to me. This is before I knew what SEL was. This was like early 2000. And then at the end, it says, and the day seems to end the way it began, but suddenly there it is right in front of you, a bright and vivid, quietly waiting, just as you imagined it would be. It never says it is a sprig of hope, but when I look at this book, it's a sprig of hope. And so you can pick up any picture book and connect to it with emotion. What we're going to talk about is activities you can do with these books to bring it further. So this is just me slightly sharing. Also, if you ever want to borrow this book, just let me know. My email is andrea@FableVision.com, and I will do read-alongs to any classroom that requests. All right. So I digress. All right, I'm going to go back over here. So you guys probably are familiar with the CASTLE framework for SEL. Because it's the most widely used framework and the one we use at FableVision Learning, because it identifies 5 facets of SEL: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. All right. And so what we have done at FableVision is we've connected Peter's books to an SEL facet that most aligns with the theme of that book. So then as a teacher or as a parent, you can be purposeful about what you're going to teach and what you're going to talk about with your students or with your children. So we're going to start with self-awareness. Self-awareness is about understanding our own emotions, thoughts, values, strengths, interests. It's about knowing who we are. And much like I said, when I first started at FableVision, they handed me the North Star book. We pair the North Star to the facet of self-awareness. Peter wrote it in 1997 as an allegory for finding your purpose in life. In this story, a young boy is hurried along the path and told he will fall behind, but he doesn't even know where he's going until he finds his North Star. So I'm going to read an abbreviated version of the North Star book. It is long, it is beautiful. So we're going to read an abbreviated version and then talk about it. All right, ready? The boy began walking down the path. It stretched out far ahead of him. Signs kept pointing him along the way. Some parts of the journey were easy. Some were very difficult. Although he was following the well-worn path, he had a growing feeling that he was lost. He stepped off the path to follow it. His thoughts were interrupted by a voice. "Oh, there you are. I was worried," said the cat. "Don't wander off like that. Now hurry, you're falling behind." So the boy ran and ran and ran and ran, and as he ran, he noticed the forest getting darker and thicker. The muddy ground became covered with water. He could no longer see the path. He sloshed through the swamp until he came to a clearing in the forest. There he saw a bird. "You look lost," the bird said. "I don't think so. I mean, I'm not sure if I'm lost," the boy replied. "I really hadn't thought about it." "Hadn't thought about it," said the bird. "You must have some idea where you're going." "Yes." "Well, I've been following the path. It seems as if many people have taken it before me, and there have been many signs along the way, and a very helpful cat guided me back to the path when I started to wander. But the crickets fell silent as the bird asked, "But where do you want to be going?" "I'm not sure," said the boy, as he looked around at the dark, tangled swamp. "But I do know that this isn't where I want to be. I guess I'm lost." The bird asked. The bird said, "Ask yourself where it is you want to go, and then follow the signs you already know." "What signs? Where are they?" But the bird flew off into the cloudy night sky. The boy looked up into the sky, something he had not done in a very, very long time. He tried desperately to see where the bird had gone, and as he did, the clouds seemed to melt, and there above him was a star, a very bright star. The boy stared at the star and felt a pang in his heart, a tingling in his spine, a whisper in his ear. He could hear the star. The voice sounded so familiar. The boy began to walk toward the star, and as he did, he noticed many other stars stretched out above him, like a great big map. They had been there all along, waiting for him. He stopped and rested a moment, savoring his guiding stars. So, after reading the North Star with your students or your kiddos, you can discuss the themes of a personal journey and purpose. And we do this activity at FableVision. I do it with everybody actually, called the Constellation Map. And we're going to do that right now. You don't have to have this fancy PDF. All you need is a sheet of paper and a pencil. So if you have a sheet of paper and a pencil, I want you to do this along with me. If you don't have a sheet of paper or pencil, you can draw on the desk. Don't draw on your desk. Don't draw on your table. But anyway, all right. So we all are unique. We have our own interests, our own values, our own experiences, and the connections that make us who we are, right? So when we find ourselves lost in life, sometimes we need to remind ourselves what these connections are and reconnect these aspects to help us find our way. So we're going to think about these things. What makes you happy? Who makes you happy? What makes you feel connected? What makes you feel safe? And for each of these things and more, draw a star on your paper and label it. Okay, so maybe it's something that's really important, make it a big star. So my big star, I'll put my husband down. Why not? He's out for a walk. I'm gonna put my mom is a big star. Gardening. Oh my gosh. And I'll do baking, mostly bread. And then family, grandma. And you can start drawing out your constellation and your stars. Okay. And maybe some of your stars you're going to put close together because they're connected to each other. You know, there's no right or wrong way to make your constellation. But at the end, you're going to have your own unique constellation that it's a constellation of you. And these are the things that when you have with your, if you're doing this with your students or your kids, you can hang them up. And other people can look at everyone else's stars and they can say, "Oh, I didn't know that you liked this." And you start finding connection points between people's constellations. And it also is a nice way to remind people or remind each other, we all have our own unique paths. Like I'm not exactly like my sister, and I'm not exactly like my cousin who's also extremely close in age to us. We're close and our stars might be similar, but we're not the same. And so we all have our own unique path that we're doing. Does anyone have a constellation they want to share? You don't have to share it, but I encourage you to do this activity with your students. And the North Star book is, with it also being the handbook for FableVision, it has also been the theme of a lot of school years. And I want to give a shout out to the Metro West YMCA in Framingham. Last summer, we did a whole summer camp with them around Peter's book, The North Star, that tied in STEM projects and animation projects. And it was 8 weeks, and the kids every day read The North Star and built onto their constellation. And it was an amazing experience. So I just want to give a shout out to them who saw a unique way to activate a book. Several of other of Peter's books also speak to self-awareness. The Dot, Ish, and Sky Color, what Peter calls his Create Trilogy, they all show the value of bravery, creativity, self-efficacy, and they are lovely growth mindset books. If you've never read them, pick them all up, read them in order. Dot, Ish, Sky Color, and you're going to see that the character in each book continues on. So Vashti encourages a little boy at the end to make his mark. That little boy is Ramon. He gets his own book called Ish, and his sister encourages him not to give up on his creativity, and she gets her own book, and it's called Sky Color. So there's this unique thread that I don't even know Peter intended to have happen, but it's a thread that shows that when you have a strong sense of self-awareness, you can help others along their journey. So that's just a shout out to those books. Our next facet of SEL is self-management. This is about how you manage your emotions, your thoughts, and your behaviors in different contexts. This is one that I will say for the past 2 years, maybe it has been a little bit difficult to work with. And as you're working with students, you're probably feeling this too. It is one, it's a lot of emotions, and in different situations and different ways of dealing with it, it's hard to deal in uncertainty. And this pandemic has been something we've never had to deal with before. So how do you help your children cope through things that they don't have experience for when you don't have experience for? So a thing that I'm going to give a shout out to is Peter has a number of books that he has written and illustrated, but he also does the illustrations for Susan Verde's series, I Am. And the first of that is I Am Yoga, and the second is I Am Peace. And these are the first 2 books we turn to for self-management because they focus on mindfulness in the face of worry and being overwhelmed. When you know how to help yourself when you're overwhelmed, it's a really important skill. I do a community yoga class in my town in Mansfield, and last night I knew I needed that moment to be with my peers, to be with my friends, but also to feel recentered because it was an overwhelming week. It was, and so using these books is an interesting way to bring back to center. So when we're talking about, there's a trauma-informed practice that tells us that when a person has experienced trauma, their body can respond to non-threatening experiences as if they're unsafe. Dr. Dan Siegel uses, I'm going to hold my hand up again, does a description of the brain by using his hand as a model. So I'm going to picture this because it's going to turn into an activity. So you look at your hand, and you're going to imagine the bottom part of your hand is the brainstem. This is your survival brain, the part of your brain that controls the functions like fight or flight response. Your information comes in through the spinal cord, which is your arm. So this is the, automatic functions. Then in the palm is your limbic system. So this is your emotional brain, and it's where emotions happen and how you decide if you're safe. It's like the smoke detector is going to go off, to set off an alarm if something's like, oh my gosh, it's not safe. So that's that part of your brain. Now curl your fingers over your thumb, and this is the cortex, or the thinking brain. And this is where This is what coordinates and balances our response to the information we receive from our body, from our body and the emotional brain. And when we're safe and comfortable, our thinking brain is like, yes, I can do these things. I can regulate your body. You know, I can listen to other people. I can go through, use compassion and empathy, and I know how to calm my fear and control the impulses. It's really good stuff. But if something stressful happens, our fight or flight response takes over and we flip our lid. And our thinking brain is no longer available to us. So this is no longer here. We feel like we're out of control because we're reacting with our survival brain instead of making decisions. So one way, and I actually did this week, one way to get back to our thinking brain is to get grounded in the present using our senses. So we're going to do it as a calm countdown. So you're going to start with the 5 things you can see right in front of you now. So I can see my decaf coffee. I can see a remote control for a TV that I don't know if it works. I can see an Altoid tin. I can see your lovely faces. And I can see a small felted orange cat. 4 things you can feel. I can feel the heating pad on my back. I can feel a step stool under my foot. I can feel the mouse in my hand as I click to the next slide. And I can feel the coolness of the desk underneath my palm. 3 things you can hear. I can hear that my husband has just come home from his walk. I can hear that there is probably an orange cat at the top of the stairs who is very hungry for dinner. And I can hear a motorcycle starting outside. I live near a gas station. 2 things you can smell. I can smell my decaf coffee. I wish I still had caffeinated coffee. And I can smell this really weird chapstick that's called Sophia, and it's named after the Golden Girls. It's very strong. And 1 thing I can taste, unfortunately, it's this chapstick, but I can taste the chapstick. So when this calm countdown is a way to stop, reflect, and see what's in front of you. So when we feel ourselves or see our kids stress out, this type of activity is very helpful. And Susan Verde's books can also help us talk about some of these strategies and why it's important to find calm in our bodies when we're feeling stressed. So we're going to look at I Am Peace. There are times when I worry about what might happen next and what happened before. This sounds like me every day. The thoughts in my head are like rushing water, and I feel like a boat with no anchor. I give myself a moment. I take a breath, and then I tell myself it's all right. I can feel the ground beneath my feet and steady myself and start to notice the here and the now. My thoughts begin to settle. My mind begins to clear. I am peace. I can watch my worries gently pop and disappear. I let things go. I can say what I feel inside out loud. I know myself. I can taste and smell and touch and hear and see what is all around me. I use my senses. I can feel my breath, feel my whole body. I tune into me. Now the water is still. I have found my anchor, and everything is all right. I don't need to worry about before or after. I am in this moment. I am peace. Now, it's important to note that in a typically developed person, when feeling overwhelmed or high stress, before flipping their lid or going offline, they seek connection. So before going, they try to find that connection. And as teachers, as caregivers, as parents, we can provide that connection. And reading books with children and talking about your feelings and emotions is all part of that connection point. So, and it helps, especially when they're feeling those negative emotions. So naming and validating the emotion is the first step in managing it. There is a person named Terry Shea that started International Dot Day, which is celebrated on September 15th. And International Dot Day is a celebration of the book The Dot and creativity. And Terry Shea is in a small school in Iowa, and every morning he runs something called the Morning Book Group, and it's with high school students. And they come in, it's 5 of them. They come in, they read a children's book, and then they say one thing that they're feeling after reading it, and then they go on their day. He started it 6 years ago. Those kids have now graduated and moved, like the first group has now graduated and moved on. But it's this unique thing that this teacher does with his students, where he gives them a moment before the day starts to settle, to find peace, to feel. It's a cool idea. So our next facet of social awareness, our next facet is social awareness. We're going to move from thinking about ourselves to seeing and understanding those around us. This facet involves being able to take other perspectives and show empathy, including with people from different backgrounds and cultures. This is the book that we use to start this conversation. It's called I Am Here. Peter's inspiration for I Am Here was a young boy with autism. In the story, the boy is alone and away from the other kids who are out there playing. And a girl notices and sees him and his strengths and befriends him. And as part of social awareness, Castle mentions recognizing diverse social norms, including unjust ones. So being able to recognize that the world is unfair is the first step in making a positive change. So the girl in I'm Here sees the boy is alone. You know, he says, I'm here, they are there. And she recognizes how that might feel. One fun little story about the I'm Here book is it started first as an animation. It's a very short animation. I'm going to play it. Done by the Southwest Autism Research and Resource Center. They came to Peter because they wanted to create an animation. They wanted to tell a story to get people to understand why this research and resource was important. And the woman who started this organization, she's like, I just want people to be able to see my son the way I see him. And so out of that conversation, the animation I'm Here came. So I'm gonna, oops. So it started as an animation. You'll see the animation has no audio, like it's just a score, but there's power in the music and the lines telling the story. So in the story of I'm Here, the little girl sees the strength in making paper airplanes and engages with him through the paper airplane. It takes practice to be able to think about someone else's perspective. So we're going to do a quick little perspective activity. And I found this one picture, but you could do this. Take a picture book and just grab a picture book, and you can do this with a picture book. So the perspective activity. So perspective is a powerful thing, especially for creativity. Because creativity happens when we are open and think about different ideas. We could stretch outside our normal patterns of thinking. So listening to others and thinking from alternate perspectives. That's how we can improve our creative thinking. So in a perspective activity, you can have fun with it. I have this picture of a little girl and she's sitting on a rock. And so you can ask your kids, what do you think this little girl is thinking? What is she feeling? What is she going to talk about at dinner? What do you think the worm is thinking? I bet that worm's going like, oh no, I should have found a different rock. What do you think the rock is thinking? Is it the rock she's lifting or the rock she's sitting on? So there are different things of looking at that picture and coming up with questions about what might be happening in it, but then also the responses, the different perspective of what might be there. I bet the rock she's sitting on is going, oh, you should lift me up. I got plenty of worms under me. So, all right. Bye, Sheena. So the fourth facet, I realize it's getting late. The fourth facet we're going to talk about is relationship skills. And relationship skills refer to our ability to establish and keep good relationships with others and to navigate situations with different people. The book that we connect to this facet is another Susan Verde collaboration called I Am Love. And I Am Love is a beautiful book. And this book includes the themes of positive relationships, listening, communicating, forgiveness, working together, offering support. All aspects of this is relationship skills. In the book, the little girl shouts, love is connection. Building relationships with our students, with our children, that's a huge part of social emotional learning, that connection. So one way to create and reinforce the relationships is, you see the people who do the special greeting every morning as the day starts. There was a school I was at in Georgia, and I actually loved this. It was a second grade class. I was sitting in the second grade class. Peter was doing a virtual visit, and I was running a writing workshop. And the way they start their day was I had next to Sam. And Sam looked at me and he said, Andrea, from my heart to your heart, I wish you well. And so that greeting, from my heart to your heart, I wish you well, was this connection that I just made with this little boy that I then passed on to the next girl sitting next to me. Another way to do connections, and one I learned from my grandmother, is make sure to write letters. The handwritten letter to family far away, friends down the street. There's a connection that could be made through the mail and through handwriting. Holding a family book club, that's another idea. So these are just ideas of making that connection. So the final facet of SEL is responsible decision making. This one's about making the constructive choices of our own selves and in social interactions. So making good judgment calls, recognizing the consequences of our actions, finding solutions to personal and social problems. Peter's book, Say Something, is our go-to book for this. Because it deals with what do we do if we hurt another or we see an injustice, and empowers students to see themselves as capable and responsible decision makers. So if you're angry, say something to help people understand. You made me feel invisible. That really hurt. I'm really sorry. If you see an injustice, say something peacefully. Inspire others to do the same. Your voice can inspire, heal, and transform. Your voice can change the world. Are you ready to say something? So after reading this book, there's this one activity that we like to do where we encourage people to draw a speech bubble. And this is going to be your say something speech bubble. Okay. And you're going to come up with a word or phrase that means something to you. So if my mother was on this right now, I would be embarrassing her. And I'm doing this also in honor of Mother's Day. My speech bubble would say, I love my mom. And then I would also throw a photo of her up here, and then she'd be like, oh my gosh. But that's what I would say right now. It's been a challenging few months. My grandmother passed, my mother's mother, my grandmother passed away 2 months ago. And I know this is going to be her first Mother's Day without a mom. And she's dealing with a lot of emotions around this. And it's funny because last night last night I was talking to her and she's like, Annie, I just want to read a picture book. So she took, again, my mom steals picture books from me. She took my book, Wonder Walk, and she's been reading that with the kids that she watches because it gave her that connection to wonder again, like she did with her mom, who used to read the Bear Hunt book with me when I was a kid. So there's all these connections that you can make with picture books and social emotional learning. So this is just an overview of the 5 books and 5 facets. And we've talked about activities for each one. It is our goal, my goal, personally, and also luckily with the joy that I do at FableVision, is to bring the 4 C's of communication, collaboration, critical thinking, creativity, and I toss on a 5th of compassion into classrooms and into just daily interactions with people and with learning. I think about if Peter was younger, if when I was younger, there wasn't that teacher that noticed the storyteller, noticed the artist, and helped him navigate, what would have happened? We know that all children are gifted. They have their own unique ways, and it's our fun job of helping them find their way and work positively in the world to reach their potential. And that is, for me, what education is. So I'm happy that you guys, I don't know why I threw this one in here. This is another really cool thing that we do called Start with a Story, which takes one of Peter's books and pairs it to an activity. I'm not going to go into it right now, but if you want to learn more, let me know. So I'm very blessed to have spent this evening with you guys today. And as we like to say at FableVision, our dots are connected. And I truly mean this. Like you connected today, you spent the time today to listen to me talk about picture books and SEL and the work I do with FableVision. But I am also one of those crazy people that responds to emails all the time. I love talking to people and meeting new people. And if you have a question or a passion along the way, or if you have a kid that might need a little bit of encouragement, or a teacher that needs a little bit of encouragement, or you yourself need a little bit of encouragement, shoot me an email. That's kind of the joy that I get to do at my job, is helping people create bravely and helping people find their North Star again. So I'm going to stop my presentation side of everything and open it up if anyone has any questions or comments, or I talk a lot, so anything.
Andrea, I just love your passion. I love how you relate the books and the work that the Reynolds brothers are doing with your own personal life and bring that in. It's such a powerful connection. I really envy that. That's a great skill.
It's a wonderful company to be a part of, because it honestly doesn't feel like a company. It feels like a family, and I don't say that lightly. I mean, I've been with FableVision now for 9 years, and I have traveled around this country with Peter and Paul. And when you have to sleep overnight in an airport to make a flight because your flight got canceled, you get to know a lot about a person.
Yeah. So true.
So any new books coming out soon? So yes, there are. So Peter's most recent book was Our Table that came out around Thanksgiving, and then Love You by Heart came out in January. And he just sent the final pages of his last book to the publisher, which is an amazing book about when things don't go right. How do you handle that? The name of the book is called When Things Don't Go Right, Go Left. It's amazing and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful poem. And so he has that one. He has another book coming out with Cat Stevens. So he illustrated the Peace Train book. He's illustrating If You Want to Sing Out. And I know he just submitted the final pages to the Judy Moody series as the new Judy Moody book that's coming out, because he does the illustrations for that. So I know those books, and there's 4 other that are due next year. I wish I didn't have this laundry list of knowing his books and the deadlines, because it makes me anxious. I'll have to practice my 5. But yes, there's more books.
Practice what you preach.
Any other questions or comments or favorite picture books that people have? So I do encourage you guys. I think most of you guys are in Massachusetts. So the Blue Bunny bookstores in Dedham, Mass, it's on High Street in Dedham. Oh, Washington Street. It's on one of those streets in Dedham. I should know because I work right above it, so I should actually know the address. But you're welcome to come on down, and if you're coming down, shoot me an email, let me know, and I'll get you a cup of coffee and maybe a free print. I have both.
It's called the Blue Bunny Bookstore.
It's the Blue Bunny Bookstore.
Okay.
577 High Street.
I'm just putting it in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you.
Any other thoughts or comments?
Welcome, Kathy. It's all good. It's the end of a Thursday, and a new Picard just came out. So if you're a Star Trek fan, the season finale of Picard is on Paramount right now.
So you got to go watch it.
It is a big deal in our house. It is a nerdy big deal. Wait a minute. So Linda, you're a visual arts teacher.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
So okay, Linda, shoot me an email, because we're working with the Department of Maine using the North Star book. So shoot me an email. We might have some connections going on up there. So send me an email, Andrea at FableVision. Okay. Cool.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, I've learned so much. Oh, 3rd grade inclusion teacher. Awesome.
Awesome.
I love seeing the comments.
Oh, awesome. Katie, where do you teach? I'm just curious about stuff, what people teach.
I am too.
Linda, I love that you caught it in the DOE news. I wrote that press release. So that's awesome.
Oh, she teaches in Bridgewater, Mass.
Awesome. Well, I live in Mansfield. You are not far away. Let me know if you ever want to, meet up or chat or get some brain ideas. That's brainstorm and go and just some chat. Just let me know.
Awesome.
Okay, cool.
Well, thank you everyone for attending, and thank you, Andrea, for some great insight and really good stuff that we can connect to, even as an adult. We're talking about children's books, but the concepts that are presented in the books are so simple, but so relevant to everyone.
Yes, yes. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for spending the time. I'll
All
talk
right.
to you. All right, take care.
Bye, everybody.